Alan, would you like to go ahead
Yes,
and
ma'am.
talk about this story? Thank you.
How far it could go. She picked him out right away the minute she walked into the restaurant. I mean, it was no great trick. There were only two men seated alone, and one was an elderly gentleman who already had a plate of food in front of him. The other was 35 or 40, with a full head of dark hair and a strong jawline. He might have been an actor, she thought, an actor you'd cast as a thug. He was reading a book, though, which didn't entirely fit the picture. Maybe it wasn't him, she thought. Maybe the weather had delayed him. She checked her coat and then told the head waiter she was meeting a Mr. Cutler. Ah, right this away, signorina, he said. And for an instant, she fancied that he was going to show her to the elderly gentleman's table. But of course, he led her over to the other man, who closed his book at her approach and got to his feet. Billy Cutler, he said, and you're Dorothy Morgan. And you could probably use a drink. What would you like? Gee, I don't know, she said. What are you having? Well, he said, touching his stemmed glass. Night like this, the minute I sat down, I ordered a martini, straight up and dry as a bone, and I'm about ready for another. Martinis are in, aren't they? As far as I'm concerned, they were never out. I'll have one, she said. While they waited for the drinks, they talked about the weather. Treacherous out there. The main roads, the Jersey Turnpike, the Garden State, they get these chain collisions where 50 or 100 cars slam into each other. It used to be a lawyer's dream before no fault came in. I hope you didn't drive. No, I took the PATH train and then a cab. Oh, you're much better off. Well, I've been to Hoboken before. In fact, we looked at houses here about 1.5 years ago. Oh, you bought anything then, you'd be way ahead now. Prices are through the roof. We decided to stay in Manhattan. And then we decided to go our separate ways, she thought, but didn't say. And thank God we didn't buy a house or he'd be trying to steal it from me. I drove, he said, and the fog's terrible, no question. I took my time, didn't have any trouble. Matter of fact, I couldn't remember if we said 7 or 7:30, so I made sure I was here by 7. Oh, then I kept you waiting, she said. I wrote down 7:30, but I figured it was probably 7:30. I also figured I'd rather do the waiting myself than keep you waiting. Anyway, he tapped the book. I had a book to read and I ordered a drink. And what more does a man need? Here's Giuseppe with her drinks. Her martini, straight up and bone dry, was crisp and cold and just what she needed. She took a sip and said as much. Well, there's nothing like a martini, he said, and they make a good one here. Matter of fact, it's a good restaurant altogether. They serve a good steak, a strip sirloin. Also, coming back in style, she said, along with the martini. He looked at her. He said, so, you want to be right up there with the latest trends? Should I order us a couple of steaks? I don't think so, she said. I really shouldn't stay that long. Whatever you say. I just thought we'd have a drink and handle what we have to handle. That's right. Sure. That'll be fine. Except it was hard to find a way into the topic that had brought her to Hoboken, to this restaurant, to this man's table. They both knew why she was here, but that didn't relieve her of the need to broach the subject. Looking for a way in, she went back to the weather, the fog. Even if the weather had been good, she told him, she would have come by train and taxi because she didn't have a car. He said, "No car? Well, didn't Tommy say you had a weekend place up near him? You can't go back and forth on the bus." "It's his car," she said. "His car. Oh, the fellas. Howard Bellamy's," she said. "Why not say his name? His car, his weekend place in the country, his loft on Green Street, as far as that goes." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "But you're not still living there?" "No, of course not. And I don't have any of my stuff at the house in the country, and I gave back my set of car keys, all my keys, the car and both houses. I kept my old apartment on West 10th Street all this time. I didn't even sublet it because I figured I might need it in a hurry, and I was right, wasn't I?" What's your beef with him exactly? I mean, if you don't mind me asking. My beef? I never had one, as far as I was concerned. We lived together 3 years, and the first 2 weren't too bad. I mean, trust me, it was never Romeo and Juliet, but it was all right. And then the 3rd year was bad, and it was time to bail out. She reached for her drink and found the glass empty. It was odd. She didn't remember finishing it. She looked across the table at him, and he was waiting patiently, nothing showing in his dark eyes. After a moment, she said, "He says I owe him $10,000. 10 large, he says." "Do you?" She shook her head. "But he's got a piece of paper, a note I signed for $10,000. Right. Like you loaned you the money. Right." She toyed with her empty glass. "But he didn't. Oh, he's got the paper signed, and he's got a canceled check made out to me and deposited to my account. But it wasn't a loan. He gave me the money, and I used it to pay for a cruise the 2 of us took." "Where? The Caribbean?" "No, the Far East. We flew into Singapore and cruised down to Bali." "Oh, sounds pretty exotic." "I guess it was," she said. "This was while things were still good between us, or as good as they ever were." Uh, "This paper you signed," he prompted. "Something with taxes so he could write it off. Don't ask me how. Look, all the time we lived together, I paid my own way. We split expenses right down the middle. The cruise was something else. It was on him. If he wanted me to sign a piece of paper so the government would pick up part of the tab, yeah, why not?" "Exactly. And now he says it's a debt and I should pay it. And I got a letter from his lawyer. Can you believe it? A letter from a lawyer." "Nah, he's not going to sue you." "Well, who knows? That's what the lawyer's letter says he's going to do." Nah, he frowned. He goes into court. You start testifying about a tax dodge. But how can I if I was a party to it? Still, the idea of him suing you after you were living with him. Usually it's the other way around, isn't it? I think they got a word for it. Palimony. That's it. Palimony. You're not trying for any, are you? Are you kidding? I said I paid my own way. That's right. You said that. I paid my own way before I met him, the son of a bitch, and I paid my own way while I was with him, and I'll go on paying my own way now that I'm rid of him. The last time I took money from a man was when my Uncle Ralph lent me bus fare to New York when I was 18 years old, and he didn't call it a loan, and he sure as hell didn't give me a piece of paper to sign. But I paid him back all the same. I saved up the money and sent him a money order. I didn't even have a bank account. I got a money order at the post office and I sent it to him. That's when you came here, when you were 18. Fresh out of high school, she said. And I've been on my own ever since and paying my own way. I would have paid my own way to Singapore as far as that goes, but that wasn't the deal. It was supposed to be a present. And he wants me to pay my way and his way. He wants the whole 10,000 plus interest. And he's looking to charge you interest. Well, the note I signed, $10,000 plus interest at the rate of 8% per annum. Interest. He's pissed off that I wanted to end the relationship. That's what this is about. Yeah, I figured. And what I figured is if a couple of the right sort of people had a talk with him, maybe he would change his mind. And that's what brings you here. She nodded, toying with her empty glass. He pointed to the glass, raised his eyebrows questioningly. She nodded again, and he raised a hand and caught the waiter's eye and signaled for another round. They were silent until the drinks came, and then he said, a couple of boys could talk to him. Oh, that would be great. What would it cost me? $500 would do it. Oh, that sounds good to me. The thing is, when you say talk, it'll have to be more than talk. You want to make an impression, a situation like this. The implication is either he goes along with it or something physical is going to happen. Now, if you want to give that impression, you have to get physical at the beginning. So he knows you mean it. Yeah, so he's scared. Because otherwise what he gets is angry. Not right away. Yeah, two tough-looking guys, push him against the wall, tell him what he's got to do. That makes him a little scared right away, but then they don't get physical. And he goes home, and he starts to think about it, and he gets angry. I can see how that might happen. But if he gets knocked around a little the first time, enough, so he's going to feel it for the next 4 or 5 days. He's too scared to get angry. That's what you want. Okay. He sipped his drink, looked at her over the brim. His eyes were appraising her, assessing her. There's things I need to know about the guy. Like, what kind of shape is he in? He could stand to lose 20 pounds, but other than that, he's okay. No heart condition, nothing like that. No. You work out? He belongs to a gym, she said, and he went there 4 times a week for the first month after he joined. And now if he goes twice a month, it's a lot. Hey, it's like everybody, he said. That's how the gyms stay in business. If all their paid-up members showed up, you couldn't get in the door. You work out? She said. Well, yeah, weights, mostly a few times a week. I got in the habit. I won't tell you where I got in the habit. And I won't ask, she said. But I could probably guess. You probably could, he said, grinning. He looked like a little boy for an instant. And then the grin faded and he was back to business. Martial arts. You ever get into any of that? No. You're sure? Not lately, but maybe before the two of you started keeping company. He never said anything, she said. And he would. It's the kind of thing he'd brag about. Does he carry? Carry? A gun? God, no. You know this for a fact. He doesn't even own a gun. Same question. Do you know this for a fact? She considered it. Well, how would you know something like this for a fact? I mean, you could know for a fact that a person did own a gun, but how would you know that he didn't? I can say this much. I lived with him for 3 years. There was never anything I saw or heard that gave me the slightest reason to think he might own a gun. Until you asked the question just now. Never entered my mind. And my guess is it never entered his mind either. You'd be surprised how many people own guns. I probably would. Sometimes it feels like half the country walks around strapped. There's more carrying than there are carry permits. A guy doesn't have a permit, he's likely to keep it to himself that he's carrying or that he even owns a gun in the first place. I'm pretty sure he doesn't own a gun, let alone carry one. And you're probably right, he said. But the thing is, you never know. What you got to prepare for is he might have a gun and he might be carrying it. She nodded, uncertain. Here's what I got to ask you, he said. What you got to ask yourself and come up with an answer. How far are you prepared for this to go? I'm not sure what you mean. We already said it's going to be physical, manhandling him, a couple of shots he'll feel for the better part of the week, work the rib cage, maybe say. All right. Well, that's great if that's how it goes. But you got to recognize it could go farther. What do you mean? He made a tent of his fingertips. I mean, you can't necessarily decide where it stops. I don't know if you ever heard the expression, but it's like having relations with a gorilla. You don't stop when you decide. You stop when the gorilla decides. I never heard that before. It's cute. I sort of get the point. Or maybe I don't. Is Howard Bellamy the gorilla? No, he's not the gorilla. The violence is the gorilla. Oh, you start something, you don't know where it goes. Does he fight back? If he does, then it goes a little farther than you planned. Does he keep coming back for more? As long as it keeps coming back for it, you got to keep dishing it out. You got no choice. I see. Plus, there's the human factor. The boys themselves, they don't feel an emotional stake. So you figure they're cool and professional about it. That's what I figured. Ah, but it's only true up to a point, he went on, because, yeah, they're human, you know. So they start out angry with the guy. They tell themselves how he's a low-life piece of garbage, so it's easier for them to shove him around. And, part of it's an act, but part of it's not. And say he mouths off, or he fights back, and gets in a good lick. Now they're really angry. And maybe they do more damage than they intended to. She thought about it. I can see how that could happen, she said. So it could go farther than anybody had in mind. He could wind up in the hospital. You mean like broken bones? Or worse, eh? Like a ruptured spleen, which I've known of cases. Or as far as that goes, there's people who've died from a bare knuckle punch in the stomach. Oh, I saw a movie where that happened. Well, I saw a movie where a guy spreads his arms and flies. But dying from a punch in his stomach, they didn't just make that up in the movies. That can happen. Now you've got me thinking. Well, it's something you've got to think about, because you have to be prepared for this to go all the way. And by all the way, I mean all the way. Now, it probably won't. 95 times out of 100, it won't. But it could. Right. It could. Jesus, he's a son of a bitch, but I don't want him dead. I want him to be done with this son of a bitch. I don't want him on my conscience for the rest of my life. That's what I figured. But I don't want to pay him $10,000 either, the son of a bitch. This is getting complicated, isn't it? Let me excuse myself for a minute, he said, rising. And you think about it, and then we'll talk some more. While he was away from the table, she reached for his book and turned it so she could read the title. She looked at the author's photo, read a few lines of the flap copy, then put it as he had left it. She sipped her drink. She was nursing this one, making it last, and looked out the window. Cars rolled by, their headlights slightly eerie in the dense fog. When he returned, she said, "Well, I thought about it. And I think you just talked yourself out of $500. That's what I figured. Because I certainly don't want him dead, and I don't even want him in the hospital. I have to admit, I like the idea of him being scared, really scared bad, and hurt a little. But that's just because I'm angry. Anybody'd be angry. But when I get past the anger, all I really want is for him to forget this crap about $10,000, for Christ's sake. That's all the money I've got in the world. I don't want to give it to him. Maybe you don't have to. What do you mean? I don't think it's about money. Not for him. It's about sticking it to you for dumping him or whatever. So it's an emotional thing, and it's easy for you to buy into it. But let's say it was a business thing. You're right, and he's wrong. But it's more trouble than it's worth to fight it out, so you settle. Settle? Yeah. You always paid your own way, so it wouldn't be out of the question for you to pay half the cost of the cruise, would it? No, but it was supposed to be a present from him to you. But forget that for the time being. You could pay half No, still that's too much. What you do is you offer him $2,000. I have a feeling he'll take it. God, I can't even talk to him. How am I going to offer him anything? You'll have someone else make the offer. You mean like a lawyer? No, then you owe the lawyer. No. I was thinking I could do it. Are you serious? Hey, I wouldn't have said it if I wasn't. I think if I was to make the offer, he'd accept it. I wouldn't be threatening him. But there's a way to do it so a guy feels threatened. Oh, he'd feel threatened, all right. I'll have your check with me, $2,000 payable to him. My guess is he'll take it. And if he does, you won't hear any more from him on the subject of the 10 grand. So I'm out of it for 2,500 for you, and no, I wouldn't charge you anything. Well, why not? All I'd be doing is having a conversation with a guy. I don't charge for conversations. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy who owns a couple of parking lots and reads thick novels by young Indian writers. Oh, this, you read it? She shook her head. It's hard to keep the names straight, especially when you're not sure how to pronounce them in the first place. And it's like if you ask this guy what time it is, he tells you how to make a watch or maybe a sundial. But it's pretty interesting. I never thought you'd be a reader. Billy, parking lots, he said. Guy who knows guys and can get things done. That's probably all Tommy said about me. Just about. Maybe that's all I am. But reading, well, it's an edge I got on just about everybody I know. It opens other worlds. I don't live in those worlds, but I get to visit them. And you just got in the habit of reading the way you got in the habit of working out? Yeah, but reading's something I've done since I was a kid. I didn't have to go away to get in that particular habit. I was wondering about that. Anyway, it's hard to read there, harder than people think. It's noisy all the time. Really? I didn't realize. I always figured that's when I'd get to read War and Peace, when I got sent to prison. But if it's noisy, then the hell with it. I'm not going. You're something else. Me? Yeah. You. The way you look, of course. But beyond the looks, the only word I can think of is class. But it's a word that's mostly used by people that haven't got any themselves, which is probably true enough. The hell with that, she said, after the conversation we just had, talking me out of doing something I could have regretted all my life and figuring out how to get that son of a bitch off my back for $2,000. I'd call that class. You're seeing me at my best. And you're seeing me at my worst, or close to it, looking to hire a guy to beat up an ex-boyfriend. Oh, that's class, all right. That's not what I see. I see a woman who doesn't want to be pushed around. And if I can find a way that helps you get where you want to be, then I'm glad to do it. But when all's said and done, you're a lady and I'm a wise guy. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Yes, I guess I do. He nodded. Drink up. I'll run you back to the city. Oh, you don't have to do that. I can take the PATH train. Hey, I've got to go into the city anyway. It's not out of my way to take you wherever you're going. If you're sure. I'm sure, he said. Here's another idea. We both have to eat, huh? And I told you they serve a good steak here. Let me buy you dinner, and then I'll run you home. Dinner, she said. Ah, a shrimp cocktail, a salad, a steak, a baked potato. You're tempting me. So let yourself be tempted. It's just a meal. She looked at him levelly. No, it's more than that. It's more than that if you want it to be, or it's just a meal if that's what you want. But you can't know how far it might go, she said. We're back to that again, aren't we? Like what you said about the gorilla, and you stop when the gorilla wants to stop. I guess I'm the gorilla, huh? Now, you said the violence was the gorilla. Well, in this case, it's not violence, but it's not either of us either. It's what's going on between us, and it's already going on, isn't it? You tell me. She looked down at her hands and then up at him. A person has to eat. You said it. And it's still foggy outside. Hey, like pea soup. And who knows, there's a good chance the fog will lift by the time we've had our meal. I wouldn't be a bit surprised, she said. I think it's lifting already. Fun. Okay. Second story. Second story is A Bad Night for Burglars. The burglar, a slender and clean-cut chap just past 30, was rifling a drawer in the bedside table when Archer Trebizond slipped into the bedroom. Trebizond's approach was as cat-footed as if he himself were the burglar, a situation which was manifestly not the case. The burglar never did hear Trebizond, absorbed as he was in his perusal of the drawer's contents, and at length he sensed the other man's presence as a jungle beast senses the presence of a predator. The analogy, let it be said, is scarcely accidental. When the burglar turned his eyes on Archer Trebizond, his heart fluttered and fluttered again, first at the mere fact of discovery, and then at his own discovery of the gleaming revolver in Trebizond's hand. The revolver was pointed in his direction. And this the burglar found upsetting. Darn it all, said the burglar, approximately. I could have sworn there was nobody home. I phoned, I rang the bell. I just got here, Trebizond said. Oh, just my luck. This whole week's been like that. I dented a fender on Tuesday afternoon, overturned my fish tank the night before last, an unbelievable mess all over the carpet, and I lost a mated pair of African mouth breeders. So rare, they don't have a Latin name yet. I hate to tell you what I paid for them. It's hard luck, Trebizond said. And just yesterday, I was putting away a plate of fettuccine, and I bit in front of my mouth. You ever done that? It's murder. The worst part is you feel so stupid about it, and then you keep biting it over and over again because it sticks out while it's healing. At least I do. The burglar gulped a breath and ran a moist hand over a moister forehead. And now this could turn out to be worse than fenders and fish tanks, Trebizond said. Don't I know it? You know what I should have done? I should have spent the entire week in bed. I happen to know a safecracker who consults an astrologer before each and every job he pulls. If Jupiter's in the wrong place or Mars is squared with Uranus or something, he won't go in. I know, it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? And yet it's 8 years now since anybody put a handcuff on that man. Now, who do you know who's gone 8 years without getting arrested? I've never been arrested. Well, you're not a crook. I'm a businessman. The burglar thought of something, but let it pass. I'm going to get the name of his astrologer. That's just what I'm going to do just as soon as I get out of here. If you get out of here alive, Trebizond said. The burglar's jaw trembled just the slightest bit. Trebizond smiled, and from the burglar's point of view, Trebizond's smile seemed to enlarge the black hole in the muzzle of the revolver. I wish you'd point that thing somewhere else, he said nervously. There's nothing else I want to shoot. You don't want to shoot me? Oh? You don't even want to call the cops. It's really not necessary. I'm sure we can work things out between us. Two civilized men coming to a civilized agreement. I have some money on me. I'm an open-handed sort. I'd be pleased to make a small contribution to your favorite charity, whatever it might be. We don't need policemen to intrude into the private affairs of gentlemen. The burglar studied Trebizond carefully. This little speech had always gone over rather well in the past, especially with men of substance. It was hard to tell how it was going over now, or if it was going over at all. In any event, he ended somewhat lamely, you certainly don't want to shoot me. Why not? Oh, blood on the carpet, for a starter. Messy, wouldn't you say? Your wife would be upset. Just ask her, and she'll tell you shooting me would be a ghastly idea. She's not at home. She'll be out for the next hour or so. Well, all the same, you might consider her point of view, and shooting me would be illegal, you know, not to mention immoral. Not illegal, Trebizond remarked. I beg your pardon? You're a burglar, Trebizond reminded him. An unlawful intruder on my property. You have broken and entered. You have invaded the sanctity of my home. I can shoot you where you stand and not get so much as a parking ticket for my trouble. Ah, in your back pocket, that metal thing, what is that? It's just a pry bar. Take it out. Hand it over. Oh, indeed, a weapon if I ever saw one. I'd state that you attacked me with it and I fired in self-defense. It would be my word against yours, and yours would remain unvoiced since you would be dead. Now, whom do you suppose the police would believe? The burglar said nothing. Trebizond smiled, a satisfied smile, and put the pry bar in his own pocket. It was a piece of nicely shaped steel, and it had a nice heft to it. Trebizond rather liked it. Well, why would you want to kill me? Or perhaps I've never killed anyone. Perhaps I'd like to satisfy my curiosity. Or perhaps I got to enjoy killing in the war and have been yearning for another crack at it. Oh, there are endless possibilities. But the point is, you might be useful to me in that manner. As it is, you're not useful to me at all. And stop hinting about my favorite charity or other euphemisms. I don't want your money. Look about you. I've ample money of my own. That should be obvious. If I were a poor man, you wouldn't have breached my threshold. How much money are you talking about anyway? A couple of $100. 500, the burglar said. It's a pittance, I suppose, but there's more at home. But you'd just call that a pittance too, wouldn't you? Undoubtedly. Trebizond shifted the gun to his other hand. I told you I was a businessman. Told you I was a business. Oh, dear, dear. Now, if there were any way in which you could be more useful to me alive than dead, you're a businessman and I'm a burglar, the burglar said, brightening. Indeed. So I could steal something for you, a painting, a competitor's trade secrets. I'm really very good at what I do, as a matter of fact, although you wouldn't guess it by my performance tonight. Now, look, I'm not saying I could whisk the Mona Lisa out of the Louvre, but I'm pretty good at your basic hole and corner job of everyday burglary. Just give me an assignment and let me show my stuff. Said Archer Trebizond. Name it and I'll swipe it. A car, a mink coat, a diamond bracelet, a Persian carpet, a first edition, bearer bonds, incriminating evidence. What was that last? No, just my own little joke. A coin collection, a stamp collection, psychiatric records, phonograph records, police records. I get the point. I tend to prattle when I'm nervous. Yes, I've noticed. If you could point that thing elsewhere. Trebizond looked down at the gun in his hand. The gun continued to point at the burglar. No, Trebizond said with evident sadness. No, I'm afraid it won't work. Why not? Well, in the first place, there's nothing I really need or want. Could you steal me a woman's heart? Hardly. And more to the point, how could I trust you? You could trust me, the burglar said. You have my word on that. Ha! My point exactly. I'd have to take your word that your word is good. And where does that lead us? Down the proverbial garden path, I'm afraid. No, once I let you out from under my roof, I've lost my advantage. Even if I have a gun trained on you, once you're in the open, I can't shoot you with impunity. So, I'm afraid. No! Trebizond shrugged. Well, really? What use are you? What are you good for besides being killed? Can you do anything besides steal, sir? I can make license plates. Hardly a valuable talent. I know, said the burglar sadly. I've often wondered why the state bothered to teach me such a pointless trade. There's not even much call for counterfeit license plates, and they got a monopoly on making the legitimate ones. What else can I do? I must be able to do something. I could shine your shoes. I could polish your car. What do you do when you're not stealing? Hang around? Go out with ladies, feed my fish when they're not all over my rug, drive my car when I'm not mangling its fenders, play a few games of chess, drink a can or two of beer, make myself a sandwich. Are you any good at making sandwiches? At chess? Well, I'm not bad. I'm serious about this. I believe you are, the burglar said. I'm not your average wood pusher, if that's what you want to know. Yeah, I know the openings, and I have a good sense of space. I don't have the patience for tournament play. But at the chess club downtown, I win more games than I lose. You play at the club downtown? Well, of course, I can't burgle 7 nights a week. Who could stand the pressure? Then you can be of use to me. You want to learn the game? No, I know the game. I want you to play chess with me for an hour until my wife gets home. I'm bored. There's nothing in the house to read. I've never cared much for television, and it's hard for me to find an interesting opponent at the chess table. So you'll spare my life in order to play chess with me. That's right. Let me get this straight. There's no catch to this, is there? I don't get shot if I lose the game or anything tricky like that, I hope. Certainly not. Chess is a game that ought to be above gimmickry. I couldn't agree more, said the burglar. He sighed a long sigh. If I didn't play chess, you wouldn't have shot me, would you? It's a question that occupies the mind, isn't it? It is, said the burglar. They played in the front room. The burglar drew the white pieces in the first game, opened king's pawn, and played what turned out to be a reasonably imaginative version of the Roy Lopez. At the 16th move, Trebizond forced the exchange of knight for rook, and not too long afterward, the burglar resigned. In the second game, the burglar played the black pieces and offered the Sicilian defense. He played a variation that Trebizond wasn't familiar with. The game stayed remarkably even until in the end game, the burglar succeeded in developing a passed pawn. When it was clear that he would be able to queen it, Trebizond tipped over his king, resigning. Nice game, the burglar offered. You play well. Thank you. Seems a pity that his voice trailed off. The burglar shot him an inquiring look. That I'm wasting myself as a common criminal? Is that what you were going to say? Let it go. It doesn't matter. They began setting up the pieces for the third game when a key slipped into a lock. The lock turned, the door opened, and Melissa Trebizond stepped into the foyer and threw it to the living room. Both men got to their feet. Mrs. Trebizond advanced, a vacant smile on her pretty face. Oh, you found a new friend to play chess with. I'm happy for you. Trebizond set his jaw. From his back pocket, he drew the burglar's pry bar. It had an even nicer heft than he had thought. Melissa, he said, I've no need to waste time with a recital of your sins. No doubt you know precisely why you deserve this. She stared at him, obviously not having understood a word he said to her. Whereupon Archer Trebizond brought the pry bar down on the top of her skull. The first blow sent her to her knees. Quickly he struck her 3 more times, wielding the metal bar with all his strength. And then he turned to look into the wide eyes of the burglar. You've killed her, the burglar said. Nonsense, said Trebizond, taking the bright revolver from his pocket once again. Isn't she dead? Well, I hope and pray she is. But I haven't killed her. You've killed her. I don't understand. But the police will understand, Trebizond said, and shot the burglar in the shoulder. And then he fired again, more satisfactorily this time, and the burglar sank to the floor with a hole in his heart. Trebizond scooped the chess pieces into the box, swept up the board, and set about the business of arranging things. He suppressed an urge to whistle. He was, he decided, quite pleased with himself. Nothing was ever entirely useless, not to a man of resources. If fate sent you a lemon, he made lemonade. That's fun.
Thank you, Alan. They were marvelous. Thank you very much. Are these your favorite Lawrence Block stories?
There's a couple of others. There's another one I said called Hilliard's Ceremony. It takes place in Africa. All this other stuff takes place in New York. But this one takes place in Africa, and it's really fun. So I want to read that for you guys too sometime.
Oh, how wonderful. Thank you. Are there any questions, any comments? You've got somebody that says you're a great reader. Alan?
Yes?
From John Reed says to everyone, bravo. And as does, yes.
John Beach said that?
Yes, he did.
Oh, you can't believe him. I wouldn't believe. I don't trust him. Yes, I'm glad.
Any other questions?
Huh?
I think you're very good at it. Does Block live in New York? Is he still in New York?
Who, John Beach?
No. Lawrence Block.
Oh, yes. Lawrence Block lives on, I think, West 12th Street in the Village somewhere there with his wife, Lynn. Mm-hmm. And it's a lovely area. I used to live down that area a long time ago. Anyway, Lawrence Block and his wife belonged to the Century Travelers Club. And that's not the exact name for it, but you have to have passports, I guess, that you have gone to visit 100 different countries. Then you are allowed to join this prestigious organization as a bronze member. And then after you can show that you've gone to 115 countries, then you're allowed to, you move up to being a silver. And then when you get to 130 or something like that, 35, you're a gold member. Uh-huh. And it's just a wonderful organization if you like to travel. I would love to sit in those meetings or fly on the wall. Any other questions?
Kate says, thanks so much. I will have to read Block's book, Enough Rope, which is where you tell these stories. Yes.
It'll take you a long time. 883 pages, but they're fun stories. All right, well, thank you, ladies. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for keeping quiet while I read. Anyway, I'm leaving. I'm going to leave the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. This was wonderful, as always. And I hope we can do this again sometime with another couple of stories.